Hey guys, welcome back. Robocraft Early Access coverage. This is episode 32. I'm Enigmius, and today we're building a new bot. As promised, this is our Tier 9 bot that we're going to be using to farm Tier 9 tech points to unlock the Tier 9 Tesla blades, so then we can unlock the Tier 10 Tesla blades and have them available for Tier 10 bots. That's the plan. And I decided for this build that we'd be making a plasma bomber. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in Tier 10 is that the absence of the ability to over-tier weapons, in addition to the way that different tiers have different damage scaling, plasma bombers aren't so devastating as they could be in the lower tiers. If you're in like Tier 7 and you're up against someone who's got all Tier 9 plasma cannons, you notice immediately because they do a lot of damage. In this case, it's a Tier 9 bot. We're going to be using Tier 10 plasma cannons because that's what I've got. And frankly, I'm not interested in farming more RP just so that I can buy Tier 9 plasma cannons. We're just going to go for the Tier 10. It's one tier above the tier that we're in. I think people will be okay. They're not going to, throw their keyboards at their monitors and scream and rage over it. At least I would think not. You never know. This is also going to be a very simple bot. I mean, I'm trying to get by without having to spend as much RP as I would if I was, building this for a bot that I was going to keep for a certain period of time. This is just farm up some RP, and I kind of think that this might be one of those bots that I keep in the garage for a while until I realize someday that I haven't used it forever and I could probably just sell off the components and use the RP for something else. But in this case, I'm using up components that I've had lying around. A lot of the components that we used in the Interceptor, the Tier 8 Interceptor, are going to be used in this bot. The Halloween wings, the rudders, thrusters, things like that are all going to be recycled. And of course, borrowing the guns from the Pretty Hate machine so that we can get this guy equipped and ready to do battle without costing ourselves an arm and a leg. So the chassis design is really, really simple and straightforward. The idea that I got was from like a catamaran. If you're familiar with the boat, it's got the main section of the boat in the middle that has one or two outriggers on either side for stability. So that's kind of the idea here, is that we've got the central spine, and I've got those upside down V-shaped little arms sticking off the spine. Those are going to be what the guns mount onto. And then we've got these outriggers. I can't think of any other word to describe them. Off to either side that are going to offer a little bit of protection, I hope, and also a little bit of stability in the sense that we can have multiple mounting points so that the guns aren't just dangling off one block. We kind of want to avoid that. This is one of the key elements of the armor core, is that we can have multiple connection points without weakening the bot substantially like with earlier Triforce designs. So in this case, super simple to set up, and that was a lot of alliteration, but you get the idea. We've got the outrigger kind of things going on, and then just trying to get a feel for the layout. This is where it's time to play around and see how things come together and see how I like them, and if I don't like them, now's the time to change them before everything gets built on top of them, and then you have to start digging through stuff to make the changes. So you can see we've got symmetrical shapes. Trying to figure out how we want to bring things together on the back end here isn't always necessarily as straightforward as other parts of the build, but it's not difficult. It's definitely not difficult. So you can see we're filling it in here, and what we're ending up with is something that is ultimately a solid platform that you can't shoot through, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's, got a bunch of open wavy things going on. One of the important things that I always overlook, I mean, for me, doing the whole armor core thing and trying to explain the benefits to people, one thing that I overlook on a very regular basis is the weight advantage that you have when you've got a vehicle that's built entirely out of prisms and tetras instead of cubes and inners. The weight of this vehicle will be less than half what it would be if all of the prisms and tetras were substituted for cubes. So when you're talking about wings that can only lift a certain amount before you start getting into penalties with lift, and thrusters that can only move a certain amount before you start getting into penalties with speed, this is really kind of advantageous to be able to do this. Now, I ran out of red blocks, red prisms, so I just filled it in with blue for the time being, just so that you can see the final shape, what it'll be like. And now we're filling in with tetras, as we often do for the spine, just to give it a little bit more mass so it can absorb a little bit more damage before things start to fall apart. And also, this is what will finish off that whole solid platform that's treated that way in terms of things being able to pass through it. Nothing can shoot through the bottom, through any of these holes up to the top, as far as we know. Those are all considered interior things where the hitboxes is a cube and it's not the slanty prism kind of thing. So that should provide a certain amount of protection for the wings. You'll notice that the control surfaces on the wings are actually, if this was a real life kind of thing, you wouldn't even be able to move the ailerons on the wings and they wouldn't work. But this is Robocraft where we can get away with that, so that's what we're going to do. We're giving our wings a certain amount of protection. You can still hit the tips of them, still knock them off fairly easily. That's just the way the wings work. But in the grand scheme of things, not bad so far. Very low profile. When we're talking about protecting ourselves as best we can, having a low profile means we're harder to hit. And I'm very, very happy to be as hard to hit as possible. Realistically speaking, there's a lot of discussion now about SMGs, not fair, flyers fall down, SMGs start shooting at them, flyers fall down. There's only so much you can do to explain, balance and explain to people that there are certain things that are kind of maybe not working with the game, and then there are certain things that are maybe not working with the way people are playing the game. And one of the things that flyers like to do a lot is fly way up in the sky all the time. And then they come under fire and they've got nowhere to go to escape that. Basically, all they can try and do is maneuver evasively, which with SMGs only gets you so far. With railguns, sometimes it works, but realistically speaking, maneuvering out in the open is no more effective as a flyer than it is for someone who's sitting out in the open and they've got people shooting down on them and they're trying to maneuver to make people miss. It's just not a bad idea, and it's called overextending for a reason. It's describing a situation that is not good. And the way to fix it is to not get into the situation in the first place if you can avoid it. With flyers, that means flying low. It means using the terrain whenever possible, just like in any other kind of bot, to prevent the enemy from being able to just unload on you, but also get an element of surprise, and then using the altitude and things to eliminate the barriers of the terrain where it's appropriate, instead of just trying to fly way up in the sky thinking, haha, nobody can reach me from here, and then getting shot down and saying, damn it, something's OP and needs to be nerfed. So we're not building this bot with the plan that we're going to be flying up in the sky and living forever because that's the way we think it should be. We're building it with the idea that we're going to be making a lot of mistakes, dying very, very badly quite often, but ultimately trying to play an intelligent game where we're using the terrain and we're using the things that we're given to mitigate the incoming damage as much as we possibly can. So a low profile obviously is a big part of that. You can see the thrusters kind of, as soon as you put thrusters on, it kind of reduces that whole low profile. I've thought about, and I may still do, putting the thrusters on the side so that it retains that low profile. The downside, of course, is that they'll be more vulnerable to damage as we're flying around. But just for the sake of goofing around and having the extreme low profile build, we might still do that. We'll see. So basically at this point, we need to get a pilot seat on and we need to get guns on. Guns is, I have to take them off the Pretty Hate Machine, so we're not super worried about that right now. But getting the pilot seat on is kind of necessary because we're at the point now where we should be testing the bot, because if we start running into problems in the testing now, it's only going to get worse when we add the weight of 6 tier 10 plasma cannons. They're not exactly light weapons. So we need to be figuring out how we're going to get the pilot seat on this thing without necessarily ruining the spine. And that's kind of the difficult part is in this particular situation, because we've got the wings on in such a concentrated, I guess, condensed way, making it a little bit difficult to find room for anything else. But we managed to find a spot, bring it up and out of the way. Anything that we've got that we want to keep, like a pilot seat, that's high priority, we like to put on higher tier blocks if we can. So that's why the purple. And also, I didn't feel like buying any more red just now. And I knew I was going to need more red. So there's basically the bot. And we're now in a position that where we can test it in its most basic form. Like I say, we don't have the guns on it, but aside from that, it's basically done. For flyers, I always thought that it would be neat to have like the radar and then the radar transmitter and all these different things, and you could be like, transmitting intelligence to your friendly guys. I don't think it's really worth it. It uses up a lot of CPU. That's the thing. It's like the kind of thing you have to weigh the benefit against the cost, and the benefit just isn't that great when you can spot targets. I would rather not waste all that CPU, but you can see we're doing all right. One of the things, actually, several of the things that we're looking for, how the plane climbs, or the flyer climbs, because you may remember the Spider Bee, the Tier 8 rail walker, very, very poor in the climb. It was so heavy that if you just kind of pitch the nose up, it's only a couple of seconds before it runs out of forward momentum and it just wants to start tilting back down and crashing to the ground. In this case, we're light enough that we can climb and dive and climb again almost limitlessly. So we've got plenty of thrust so far. Again, when we get the 6 plasma cannons on, that will probably change, but also the lift is a big deal. We want to make sure that the wings aren't struggling to make the vehicle go in the direction that we want it to go, and right now it's not. I kind of feel like we should be able to go higher, but we can't. There's only so much we can do. So we've got the lift and we've got the thrust to go vertical, which is kind of important, but also the maneuverability to turn. And this has to do with being able to fly through narrow canyons, if that's what we want to do, to kind of sneak up on the enemy, or evasive maneuvers when we see that red laser that indicates that a railgun is starting to sight in on us. If we can turn quickly, that's a huge survivability benefit. So we can do rolls, we can do all kinds of crazy stuff. Super simple design, not a lot of components, not a lot of blocks, and actually quite a lot of fun to fly. There's only so much testing we can do when we don't have guns on the vehicle, but it's one of those things where I just kind of go in and I'm goofing around and I'm having fun with a new bot that's different from other bots that I've made. I'm not necessarily going through a checklist of things that I want to test, but I do have that small list of things that I want to evaluate. So thrust, lift, turning, we're good. We can correct ourselves in mid-flight if we start going down for whatever reason. We can adjust. We can almost hit the wall. Poor piloting that we can correct by spinning the other way. It's all good. So in terms of preliminary testing, I would say that we were successful, and now it's just a matter of getting the final touches in place, getting it into a position where we can take it into a match and see what it's going to do, because there's not much point in pushing hard to do all kinds of extra tweaking on a bot that's just going to be an absolute disaster as soon as we take it into a match. We know that now after the Interceptor, but in this case, we're in really good shape. Controls like a dream. So one thing about a pilot seat that's elevated like this, on a ground bot, I wouldn't do this ever. But the theory is that this pilot seat is going to be sticking up above everything. You're not going to be able to see it from the ground unless I'm banked very hard over to one side. So I still want to have a little bit of protection around the pilot seat to protect it from, damage spreading freakishly, luckily, to the blocks underneath it. And also, directly impacting the pilot seat. So we put a few blocks around it, nothing crazy. And again, using the purple where we can, and then we're going to have to swap to some blue because we're out of purple. And really, all that's left is to get the guns on. Once the guns are on, then everything else is basically done. We can start getting into some matches and earning some tech points. Hopefully, you have to win, really. So we're still thinking in terms of how we're going to contribute to our team. Hopefully, it'll be a good contribution and not a wasted spot. But you can see the spacing, actually, I was a little bit too close. The bot should have been a little bit longer, so I had to stick the ones in the middle out a little bit so that they would all fit, but they fit now. And that's very good, because now we can just add a few more blocks here. We're good in terms of progressing through Tier 9. We're nowhere near Tier 10, so we can add extra things as we go, like electroplates, and again, offering a little bit of extra protection to the pilot seat as we're banking and doing all kinds of other things. So the next episode, we're going to do some match footage of this guy flying around, doing horrible things. If we do any major modifications, I'll let you know. I'll let you see how they're done. But in terms of a simple, relatively inexpensive bot that we slapped together to get some Tier 9 tech points, I think we're in pretty good shape. So if you want to be notified when I add that next video, and other videos for that matter, you can always subscribe to my channel and or follow me on the social media. Links for that are in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.